Dear friends, thank you for inviting me to be with you today, even though via this video. I would have wished to be with you, obviously, in person and meet some old friends and make some new ones in your conference. However, we are in the middle of the olive harvest season, a very important season for us, and I'm teaching at Bethlehem University. Obviously, this is a very critical time in our history as Palestinians. And I decided that this semester I will stay around and maybe will travel next semester after my new book comes out. I have lived in the United States for over half my life. And in those years, I felt the first half maybe of those years in the U.S., I spent advancing my career and as a scientist, as a clinician, and so forth. The second half I spent in activism, including founding chapters of ADC, and then co-founder of Al-Auda and other activism that we have done, the Wheels of Justice bus tour, and so on. These were wonderful years of my life. However, I think the best decision I made in my life so far has been to return to Palestine over 2 years ago to live here. In Palestine, I used to come for the summer and stay here for a few weeks sometimes. But really, there's nothing like living here and working here. While in the US, I wrote a book, as you know, called Sharing the Land of Canaan, which was about human rights and the inevitability of the failure of Zionism and the inevitability of a one-state solution here and the refugee returns to their home and lands. I believe this outcome is inevitable. I believe that we as human beings have an obligation to make sure that this inevitable outcome happens in as fast and as smooth a way with the least violence possible. This, I believe, is our duty as human beings, let alone as Palestinians, whether Palestinian Americans or Palestinians here in this Holy Land. I have since then also since publishing this book, I have thought about what does it mean to achieve this outcome? How do we go about doing it? What is the best ways of doing this? And obviously the activism that you all are doing in the United States and that I did before returning here is a critical part of it. Things like the boycotts, divestments, and sanctions, like education, like our Wheels of Justice bus tour, like the media work that we have done while in the US and some of you are still very actively engaged in. I believe this is very critical. I think it is critical not to get involved in too much rhetoric and creating statements about these retroactive statements that go back to the 1960s, as if these statements are going to liberate Palestine. I think practical actions on the ground, whether in the US or here in Palestine or around the world, are very critical to achieve this outcome. I also thought about this when I was in the US writing this book, that my next book would be about the resistance and the forms of achieving this action. But I thought, unlike my book on Sharing the Land of Canaan, which is more of an intellectual endeavor and reviewing of the literature and a discussion of potential outcomes, a book on resistance cannot really be done from abroad. And so I came back over 2 years ago and I worked very hard on the ground with the political action committees, with the activist groups, with the resistance committees here in Beit Sahur, in Al-Walaja, in Al-Masara, in Bil'in, other places where we have regular activities for resistance. And in the same time, I started to review the massive literature in Arabic and English and other languages on the popular resistance in Palestine to learn some lessons from this resistance and where it is heading. And what I have found is really revealing that we have had 130 years of inspiring forms of popular resistance. 130 years since the first Zionist colony in Palestine, 1880, and the demonstration that happened in front of that Zionist colony in 1880. These 130 years have seen many martyrs, thousands of people have sacrificed their lives. We have seen many heroic acts of resistance, many heroic Palestinians, intellectuals who wrote books like Arif al-Arif and others, people who have done a tremendous amount of work. And I believe the results are actually very inspiring. I believe without these popular acts of resistance, we would not have had 5.5 million Palestinians now living between the River Jordan and the Mediterranean. This outcome, basically, the sumud of our people in our land, the ability to stay in our land despite all odds, is really what I believe is going to be, in the end, the critical factor for defeating the racist Zionist colonial project in Palestine. Of course, we received support in many other ways from people around the world, and even Israeli Jews and others who supported us. But the key element, the key factor remains the Palestinian people, their enduring resistance, their enduring heroic steadfastness on their land. My late friend Edward Said once wrote, "Only if we respect ourselves as Arabs and understand the true dignity and justice of our struggle, only then we can appreciate why, almost despite ourselves, so many people all over the world, including Rachel Corrie and the two young people wounded with her from ISM, Tom Herndal and Brian Avery, have felt it possible to express their solidarity with us. I conclude with one last irony. Isn't it astonishing that all signs of popular solidarity that Palestine and the Arabs receive occur with no comparable sign of solidarity and dignity for ourselves? That others admire us and respect us more than we do ourselves. Isn't it time we caught up with our own status and made certain that our representatives here and elsewhere realize, as a first step, that they are fighting for a just and noble cause, that they have nothing to apologize for or anything to be embarrassed about. On the contrary, they should be proud of what their people have done and proud to represent them." I would only add to what Edward Said has said is that Rachel and others like her were not just expressing solidarity with us. They are expressing really their own highest ideals. They were following their bliss, so to speak. They were following what they truly believed to be the nature of human beings, the nature of the common human struggle. This is not a struggle just about Palestinians or a struggle just about Israelis or anybody else. It's a struggle that's a human struggle. And all of us should live to our highest ideals. All of us should be struggling in this sense of this common struggle for humanity. This is the struggle. These are the ideals that people like Mahatma Gandhi and Martin Luther King and Desmond Tutu worked for. These are the struggles that, the ideals that we all have engaged in for hundreds of years, achieving things like civil rights in the US, achieving things like ending the war in Vietnam, and the 40-hour work week in the US, the ending US support to apartheid South Africa. When I was in the US in the 1980s, we worked against apartheid South Africa, and I remember very clearly that those were the same kind of ideals that Rachel Corrie and others have expressed. These are the ideals of Palestinians who have worked for, that I write in my new book about, people like Mati al-Mugannam and Musa Kadhim al-Husseini and others have struggled for in the 1920s and the 1930s. And of course, in the 1960s, for example, people like Naji al-Ali and Ghassan Kanafani and others. They are the ideals of Mahmoud Darwish and Edward Said and Nasir Aruri. They are the ideals of people like who sacrificed their lives for this. People like Basim Abu Rahma, who lost his life in Belain, or his cousin Abdullah Abu Rahma, who's now in an Israeli jail for engaging in nonviolent resistance. These are the kinds of ideals that we all should struggle for and work for, ideals of human rights, ideals of equality and justice. The uprisings that come in waves basically also showed us, one of the lessons I learned from this, is that the uprisings come during periods when people least expect them. In 1986 and 1999, if you had asked people about an upcoming uprising, they would have laughed. They would have said, it is impossible, it is not possible. This is because at those times people were dispirited, their leadership was divided, fighting with each other and so on. And also the Zionists, the occupiers, whether the British before them or the Israelis after, have come essentially to be more sure of themselves because of the divisions within the Palestinian society, because of the disconnect from leadership, because of the paralysis of the political process and many other reasons. The occupiers become basically very arrogant, and they do foolish mistakes. And I think they are making foolish mistakes now by their attacks on nonviolent resistance, by their massacres on the Freedom Flotilla and so on. Because of this, I think we are in a condition now that presage that is ahead of a new uprising. This is from my study of history. And it's also because I believe the Palestinians are not going to be conquered. I believe Palestinians will be strong and will continue to survive. What we would like from you attending this conference and everybody else is to get engaged and do the maximum you can, because what you do, when you do that, you're speeding up this process, and in so doing, you're reducing the suffering that people here have to go through. I salute you, I encourage you, I ask you to get involved with us. I ask you to come and visit us in Palestine. We welcome visitors all the time, whether Palestinians who are expatriates, who are in exile, or internationals who are working with us. You are welcome here. You are welcome to join us. You are welcome to work with us. We would love to continue to be engaged, and we are building now a Palestine Justice Network that involves organizations around the world working for human rights and justice in Palestine. Join us. The website for that is palestinejm.org. Thank you very much for inviting me, and keep the hope alive, but more importantly, keep working, because work is ultimately the way we can speed up this process of arriving at peace and justice in Palestine. Thank you all. Thank you.